because you likely stopped being who you really were in order to be who that woman wanted you to be. You might look back and say, I used to be a guy that had boundaries until I got with her. What should I do? My wife or girlfriend is a narcissist. Again, go look at part one if you want kind of a little bit of a recap on how we got here. But just to briefly explain, this was actually from a subscriber that gave me permission to share this story. Well, what should they do if your wife or your girlfriend is a narcissist? And again, if this is something that you need help with or would like to discuss and talk further, definitely email me and we'll go from there. So, in part two, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper than I did in part one, where in part one, I talked about setting the boundaries. And that is going to be the biggest thing in order to repel this so-called narcissistic woman out of your life. Now, again, I don't necessarily believe in the term as we always use it, where we want to make everyone a narcissist. I don't think that is exactly how it should be properly used. It's almost like when we had the bug some years ago where, every little cold you had, if you had the sniffles or cough, oh, you must have had a vid. Oh, that's what you got. And anyone who passed away from it, they passed away from that because if they happen to have a car accident and pass away, they gave them a test and it was like, oh, they didn't die from going through the windshield. They actually passed from the vid. And a lot of times we do that with this thing called narcissism. But really, where I'm going is in this video, I would like to now focus on the impact of boundaries and what happens when you start to enforce them. So, as I said, gentlemen, the best way to repel that narcissistic woman is to have some boundaries in your life. But I'm going to talk to the guys now, especially you married men, on what that impact is going to be. You see, in all likelihood, when you marry that woman, this is the hardest thing for you to realize is the role that you played in assisting in creating that monster. And this is what I told this gentleman as well. The hardest part of realizing you want to watch videos, you want to blame the narcissist on this and the narcissist on that. The narcissist is this and the narcissist made me do that. But the hardest thing is when you realize that you a pretty jacked up dude too. You're a pretty messed up dude as well. And that's probably the first part of accepting the situation that you're in and how to enforce boundaries to get out of it. I think this has to be essential for you to free yourself. Because if you cannot look in the mirror and cannot recognize the mistakes that you made in order to get into that situation and to get involved with that woman, then your boundaries are probably going to be pretty weak. But when you start looking at your own past, you start looking at the decisions that you made, you start looking at your own Captain Save-A-Ho, I want to be saved, E40, that stuff that's going on. You need to do that first in order to really assess your boundaries, what you're going to take and what you're not going to take in your life. Because when you realize that you should have been a man that set boundaries years ago, but you weren't. And now, trust me, you're going to run into all kind of problems trying to be that guy now. For the more narcissistic tendencies that woman has, the worse it's going to be for you when you try to get out. Believe that. Believe that. And so what's going to likely happen, or what I'm going to say you must first do, you must first look inwardly and ask, who am I? Where did I go wrong in this? Where did I contribute to this? Because when you start to get yourself free out of this situation, you better believe you're going to hear the role that you played from that woman on why she is the way that she is. And in a lot of ways, she's going to be right. If you want to ask the question, well, are you a narcissist? Because believe me, she's probably going to accuse you of being one as well, especially if you start enforcing your boundaries, as I said in the first video. One of the things that you can quickly kind of ask yourself, it's like I say, they say in Christianity, well, how do I know I've never committed the unpardonable sin? I'm worried I committed the unpardonable sin. If you worry you committed the unpardonable sin, then you probably didn't commit the unpardonable sin because the person that committed the unpardonable sin could care less that they committed the unpardonable sin. When you start looking inwardly at yourself and you start changing some things about yourself, You go on your apologetic tour, maybe apologizing to the people that you might have offended or the people that your family members that you might have excommunicated because you were so busy building what they often call this shared fantasy with her. That probably lets you know how narcissistic you are not because you start apologizing to a whole lot of folks. And the first person, gentlemen, I want you to apologize to you is yourself. Some might say that's a narcissistic act, but no, I'm saying you apologize to yourself in order so you then can set your boundaries, number one. And then number two, know to apologize to others because you likely stop being who you really were in order to be who that woman wanted you to be. You might look back and say, I used to be a guy that had boundaries until I got with her. In my case, the church beat down my boundaries just as much as the woman did. Because the church, the evangelical church, taught me, well, you aren't supposed to have boundaries. It's amazing. You represent God to your wife, and God has boundaries, but you aren't supposed to have boundaries. She's supposed to have boundaries. I don't know how that makes sense. Nah, man, tell me about it, Pastor. How does that make sense? Because if I don't do something in the church, you will tell me, well, God will punish me because I broke one of God's laws. And so God punishes me for that. Okay. So if I represent God in my house to my kids and things like that, and namely to this woman, and I put down boundaries, you tell me, well, you really can't be that way, brother. You need to be a little softer, and you need to be, because if your prayers, if you offend that woman, God ain't gonna answer your prayers, brother. Yeah, miss me with that. And it's going to be the reflection of those things in your life, especially for you religious guys. It's going to be the reflection of those moments. That's what I mean. You have to forgive yourself. And you have to say, this is why I probably let my guard down in a lot of ways. And so she's right. I did contribute to a lot of things that she says that I may complain about in her. I help feed that beast. Let me give you an example. Sometimes if you are with a woman that, again, everything is transactional. Information is not told to you to make the relationship better. It's not told because they're being vulnerable. It's told in order to get a response from you or to get you to see them a certain way. So let's just say you got involved with this woman, and when y'all were dating, y'all started having those pillow talks, and you got the smooth music, and she's feeling vulnerable, and she starts to shed some tears, and she starts to cry, and maybe y'all have sex, and she has one of those orgasms that just has her tearing up, or so you think. She's tearing up, and she's like, I'm feeling so much closer to you than I ever felt before with any of those guys in the past. And you're like, for real? And she's like, yes. And he's like, well, what did those guys do to you? Well, those guys misused me and they abused me and they didn't treat me right. And those guys did this to me and those guys did that to me. And you were just like, again, I'm here. I'm going to save you. And you start going ahead and I'm going to go beat up all those guys for the way they did you. She's like, you are? He's like, yes. I can't believe they treated you like that because you're so precious. You're so sweet. You're so this. You're so that. Oh, girl, you're just the greatest. And I'm going to take care of you. And she's like, you are? And what you don't realize is, fool, that was the plan from the very beginning. If she had that orgasm, and she likely didn't, even if she did, she told you that, not because she's just feeling so much more closer to you. She still told you that. And she might be feeling closer, but she feels close enough now to roll this out. Now it's like, cool, we hit this checkpoint. I got him. Let me roll this out. Or there's just going to be some responsibility that I'm telling him this. And I'll just tell you, that's not what a normal woman does. Quote unquote normal. She's not telling you that information in order to get something out of you in the end. She may just be feeling closer and vulnerable with you. But the woman that's along that line of that narcissistic scale, she's telling you that information because it's something attached to it. And now your behavior dictates that. Now you want to go on Facebook, Instagram, social media. You're going to find all those guys that did her wrong. And you start now being like, well, I can't believe these men treated you so wrong. And I'm going to treat you so much better. And of course, she's like, it's just feeding this beast. It's feeding this beast more and more. And she's loving it. And that's the role that you play, gentlemen. That's the role that you play. That's the part you have to forgive yourself over. And you're going to have these moments in your mind, these conversations years and years later, where it's going to be like, wow, I saw this happening. I remember talking about this and I was feeding the beast. The bottom line is that ladies like this are experts at playing victim. As a guy told me on a recent trip, he said something like, my mother, I think the joke was, my mother owned a travel agency that specialized in guilt trips. And that is exactly what you're going through. You realize you're dealing with a woman that she specializes in guilt trips. And if it's a guilt trip about how everybody else did her wrong in her past, you're going to one day be that person as well. You just don't know it because you're busy thinking it was everybody else, but eventually it's going to be you. So when that information is told to you, understand you can't get sucked in. And if you did, forgive yourself as you begin to free yourself. Number two, again, go back and start talking to other people that give you a sense of clarity of who you were before you were with her. Because you've probably lost the man that you once were. You might have been that dude that had some firm boundaries. You might have said, you know what, I'm not going to be with a woman that, I don't know, uses some ecstasy or something. Who knows? Whatever it is, whatever the thing of choice folks are out there doing. And yet now she's addicted to that. And that might have been something you said, no, I'm never going to be involved with a girl that did that or does such and such. And now you're stuck because you've now become a guy that you do tolerate that, all because of what she's been through. That doesn't have to be you. And when people probably tried to tell you and warn you, you probably shunned them. I was like, no, I'm doing it this way. Apologize to those folks. Another thing you're going to need to do now, and for you married guys, this is for you married guys. I especially want you to, again, enforce your boundaries. First, figure out what they are. Secondly, begin to enforce them. And this is where your fight begins. Because everybody can realize you could be full of sound and fury, and yet you signify nothing. It's nothing about you that really means, okay, I know he's mad. I know he's talking all this schmick schmack, but he ain't going nowhere and he's not going to do anything. If you are a man with boundaries, your boundaries mean nothing, again, if they're not enforced. And you know what that enforcement means? That may mean you better shut up talking about, well, girl, it's me and you, and the Lord said we ain't never going to get a divorce because I believe that a divorce is such and such and such. Let me ask you something, sir, especially religious, sir. Ask your religious wife, if you cheated on her, would she ever leave you? And tell her to exclaim that on testimony time in the church. Tell her to get up there and be like, we got testimonies going on today. Anybody got something to share before we close out? And see if Sister Johnson or Sister Becky stands up in there and she says, I just want y'all to know that I love my husband so much that no matter who he could be sleeping over there with Sister Tara if he was, but I just love him so much that I know God hates divorce and I'm not going to leave him. I'm going to stay with him. Even if he was cheating over there with you, pastor's wife, that's right. If he was even cheating with you, I'm going to stay with him. That's how much I love him. And I believe God wants us to be divorced. Do you think your wife would do that? But you know what you'll get up there and do? I love my wife so much, church. I just want all of y'all to know I'm willing to exclaim it here, brother, during testimony time, that I love her so much. It ain't nothing that woman can do that's going to separate me from her because I'm going to be with her no matter what. And the whole time, just do know, if you're dealing with a woman on that narcissistic side of the scale, she's taking note of that. Because little do you know that you are going to have to go through some stuff that she's going to do. And you're going to be expected to stay. And now that does make you a pincushion. It's like ZZ Top sang about. That does make you the pincushion to take all that she's going to do. So what do you do now? Because you've told her that no matter what you do, I'm here. So now tell me, sir, how can you put down some boundaries and enforce them? So that's why you have to be willing to enforce your boundaries. Enforce your boundaries. And then enforcing your boundaries, just because you sit up there and you may know in your heart of hearts, as they say, especially the church folks, in your heart of hearts, you know that you think divorce is the ultimate I can't do. I never can do. Fine. But do you have to tell her that? Do you have to be so weak that you going to tell that and exclaim it during testimony time? Do you have to tell her that? Because she wouldn't do that for you, as I just addressed. You don't. So shut up, because you can't enforce your boundaries if you are saying that my boundaries technically can never be enforced. The law doesn't do that with you. Sir, shut your mouth and stop admitting that you're not going to enforce anything when it's at the end of the day, which means that you actually become more feminine when you're mad. You go into your men's fellowship, you go into your Bible study, you're talking to your best friend, you're going to the pastor, you're going to everybody, so they're complaining about all the stuff that she's doing, and then you still turn around and say, but I ain't ever going to get a divorce because we going to be together for life. What? Then shut up and stop complaining. Then just shut up and stop complaining and just be happy with you and your so-called narcissistic wife and save the emotional load that you put on everybody else then. I'm going down that road because a lot of you guys need to hear this. A lot of you guys need to hear it. And so what does that mean when it comes to enforcing your boundaries? Enforcing your boundaries may mean that divorce might have to be an option. Don't act like I'm not one of these guys. I ain't one of these so-called red pill dudes out here that haven't been through nothing. This is where gray hair gets you. And if I would let it grow out, you'll see even more. And if I had hair, you'll see even more. I got my gray hair. I didn't pay my dues. I'm about to hit double nickels, baby. I got the kids. I got the ex-wife. I got the so-called child support, alimony, whatever, to prove it. I done been through some things. So y'all can't fade me when it comes to this. A lot of these cats out here on the internet are talking to you. They 20 some odd years old, and they didn't even get a real girlfriend until they started making that good YouTube cheese. That's when they actually started giving some good advice. And now a lot of y'all are following them and believing every word that they say. They ain't been through nothing. Their breath still smell like Similac. But you they're still listening to them. So at least take some advice from an OG that got some gray hair and been through some things. I can tell you what court is like. I've been there twice. I can tell you what it's like. I know what it's like to be a plaintiff and defendant. I know what it's like to be like Chris Rock when you look around that courtroom and you realize everybody in that doggone courtroom got their hand up in your pocket. I know that reality. A lot of you cats, you listening to people that don't even know that reality. They don't even know what that's like. But they up here giving you advice on how to deal with women, how to deal with your marriage, how to deal with. They can't tell you how to deal with nothing but how to deal with being 25, 30 years old. Most of them haven't even had a real job. I mean, I ain't hating on nobody that making money off YouTube. Don't get me wrong there, because they doing better than me in that case. But when I say a real job, I'm talking about being committed to something. I got some stuff behind my belt. And so listen if you want to. So I'm not being disparaging if I call you a fool, I'm really saying this because that's how some of you guys out here are acting. You acting foolish because you got knowledge, but you won't listen to it. You won't create boundaries. You won't enforce nothing. You just want to talk. You just want to bitch and moan just like your woman does. But no other man wants to hear that. And I'm glad there was a time with me on the internet where dudes shut me down with that real fast. And the one thing I made a decision that I was going to even go pay for some counseling. Why was I going to pay for a counseling? Which again, something, if you really got a narcissistic woman, she ain't going to counseling, player. That's going to be, if you want one big thing right there, she ain't going to counseling. She's not. She may tell you she's going to counseling. She ain't going to no doggone counseling. And the counselor is going to be some counselors not going to tell her probably anything about herself. It's going to be about you. Now she'll go to marriage counseling because 9 times out of 10, the marriage counselor is going to focus on, they look at it as this is wrong, this is right. I'm going to bring them in the middle. There are some things that wrong is wrong and right is right. And I don't care who's doing it, but there's no meeting in the middle. You don't make one person less wrong. You tell them that they are wrong. I mean, I don't want to get started on marriage counseling, especially pastoral marriage counseling. But my main point that I'm making to you is that really when it gets to this, that this woman knows how this game is going to be played. And you do not have to sit up there and admit that you are really, you have no options. You do have options. Start looking inwardly at what options do you have, gentlemen?